There's something deeply unsettling about the way certain people shape their words, not to communicate, but to control. They don't shout, they don't argue, they don't even demand. They ask, calmly, casually, as if nothing is wrong. But behind every question lies a blade, sharpened by intent and hidden beneath politeness. And unless your mind is anchored, unless you've trained yourself to see through the fog, these questions will twist your judgment like ropes around your will. Comment, "I see it now," if this already feels familiar. Because if you don't notice how questions can be used to trap you, you'll keep answering them, thinking you're being kind, patient, or fair. That's how liars win. Not by force, but by quietly making you doubt yourself, adjust your tone, shrink your presence. By the time you realize it, you've given them what they wanted: your silence, your guilt, your obedience. The Stoics taught us that truth doesn't shout, it stands. Epictetus reminded us, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit. That's not blame, it's power. It means no one controls your mind unless you hand them the keys. You weren't born to be twisted by cleverness or guilt. You're here to see clearly, act justly, and remain unshaken. Every manipulative question is a mirror disguised as a window. It turns your gaze inward when you should be observing the game. It makes you second-guess your motives, your tone, your worth, while the manipulator sits comfortably in control. Are you really going to act like that? Don't you care how I feel? Why are you being so cold? These aren't real questions. They're emotional traps designed to weaken your footing. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about it." And judgment is exactly what these questions seek to corrupt. If they can bend your judgment, they bend your reality. But when you answer with clarity instead of reaction, firmness instead of guilt, you become immovable. That's the Stoic way. Lesson 8. Why are you being so defensive? This question is one of the most subtle and corrosive tools in a manipulator's arsenal. It doesn't scream or accuse directly. It invites you to doubt yourself. The words seem harmless, even concerned, but the real message is this: your resistance is the problem. It reframes your natural instinct to protect your boundaries as something inappropriate. Suddenly, you're not defending your truth. You're accused of being unreasonable. And just like that, the manipulator gains the upper hand. Let's pause right here and be clear. Defensiveness is not weakness. It is a natural, even necessary response when something sacred, like your integrity, is being challenged. The Stoics were not passive. They were precise. Epictetus taught that what matters is not what happens, but how we judge what happens. So when someone asks, "Why are you being so defensive?" the proper response is not self-doubt. It is internal inquiry. Am I defending truth or reacting to ego? If it's truth, stand your ground. If it's ego, let it go. But do not apologize just to restore false peace. A liar uses this question to break your rhythm. They want to shift the focus away from what was said to how you're responding. Why? Because they don't want the spotlight on their behavior. They want you on trial. And once you're defending yourself emotionally, the facts become irrelevant. This is not conversation. It's psychological misdirection. It's the magician's trick of moving the audience's eyes so the illusion can take place unnoticed. Seneca wrote in Letters to Lucilius, "No one can lead a happy life if he thinks only of himself and turns everything to his own purposes. You must live for others if you wish to live for yourself." This might seem contradictory. Aren't we talking about protecting ourselves? Yes, but that's precisely the point. Defensiveness becomes toxic only when it serves ego, not principle. If someone challenges you with manipulation, the Stoic answer is not to shut down or lash out. It is to respond with integrity, rooted in purpose, not pride. Let's be practical. Imagine someone confronts you. Why are you being so defensive? If you respond with frustration, you've confirmed their frame. If you explain yourself anxiously, you've accepted their premise. But what if you simply answered with calm clarity? I'm clear about where I stand. That's Stoic. That's unshakable. It doesn't escalate. It doesn't retreat. It doesn't justify. It holds. Like a rock in the tide. It's not silence. It's sovereignty. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This applies here perfectly. The manipulator wants control over your mind, over how you see yourself in that moment. If they can make you feel like the aggressive one, they win. But if you keep your perception clean, your reason intact, they have nothing. A Stoic mind does not resist for the sake of pride, nor does it surrender to preserve comfort. It discerns, it chooses, and it responds only to reason. This question also plays into a deep human fear, the fear of being seen as too much, too intense, too harsh, too serious. But as Seneca warned, he who is brave is free. And freedom doesn't come from appearing likable, it comes from knowing who you are. So if your boundaries trigger discomfort in someone else, ask yourself, is that discomfort born from my truth or from their attempt to bend it? A Stoic accepts discomfort as part of life, but not manipulation as part of truth. Now, here's an exercise drawn from Stoic practice. Next time you feel the urge to defend yourself, pause. Ask yourself, am I defending a principle or my pride? Write it down. One sentence. Make it specific. If it's principle, keep it. If it's pride, drop it. This kind of journaling builds internal clarity, the kind Marcus Aurelius practiced in his meditations. He wasn't writing for an audience. He was aligning his soul. That's what we do when we respond to manipulation with silence anchored in reason, not noise born of reaction. Also, remember this, manipulation only works when we abandon our post. The Stoics believed we all have a prohairesis, a moral will untouched by anything external. You cannot be made to feel small unless you yield that will. So stand it up, straighten your spine. Look the question in the eye and answer with stillness. Not silence that avoids conflict, but silence that reflects clarity. That is what liars cannot manipulate. Stillness born from inner conviction. Let's close this lesson with a practical Stoic affirmation. Let them question me. I will not question myself. Repeat that. Memorize it. Use it. Because when they say, why are you being so defensive? They want you to doubt your inner compass. But your compass, if built on reason, virtue, and clarity, needs no defense. It needs only presence. Lesson 7. Don't you care how this makes me feel? This question is carefully designed to place you on unstable ground. At first glance, it seems fair, even virtuous. After all, who doesn't want to be caring? But the true function of this question is not to foster empathy. It is to weaponize it. It reframes the situation so that you are suddenly the aggressor and they become the hurt party. And if you're not grounded, you'll immediately shift from standing your ground to defending your compassion. Here's where Stoic clarity becomes essential. Comment, clarity over guilt, if this strikes a nerve. Because guilt is what liars want you to feel. Not because you've actually done harm, but because guilt weakens your voice. It makes you retreat. It turns your firm no into a hesitant negotiation. Marcus Aurelius taught, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. There is no mention of how others feel about your actions, because the Stoic path is ruled by virtue, not emotion. The manipulative power in this question lies in its emotional leverage. It suggests that your actions or even your honesty are invalid because they cause discomfort. But truth often does. Justice often does. Saying no, setting a boundary, calling out manipulation, these are acts of clarity, not cruelty. A liar will never say, "You're wrong because of facts." They'll say, "You're wrong because it hurts me." And if you buy into that frame, you surrender the one thing Stoicism teaches you to protect at all costs: your moral judgment. Seneca warned us about this type of mental confusion. In On Anger, he writes, "We should give aid to the distressed, not because they complain, but because they suffer." The distinction matters. Feeling something doesn't mean that something is right. A manipulator relies on the confusion between emotional reaction and moral reality. They want your guilt to override your reason. But the Stoic doesn't move from guilt, they move from principle. Now, let's translate this into action. The next time someone asks you, "Don't you care how this makes me feel?" Pause, breathe, then answer, if needed, with something like, "I do care, but that doesn't change what's right." This is not cold. This is not cruel. It is calibrated. You acknowledge emotion without surrendering your clarity. You recognize their feeling, but you stay committed to your reason. That balance is what Stoic strength looks like in the modern world. Liars often prey on people who are deeply empathetic. They rely on the very thing that makes you human, your care for others, to override your sense of self. But Stoicism is not a rejection of empathy. It's a discipline for mastering it. To care deeply is not to cave easily. As Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." That includes being misunderstood by those who manipulate you emotionally. They will call you heartless, distant, selfish. Let them. You are not here to preserve their illusion. You are here to live by truth. Let's reflect on a personal exercise. Think back to a time when someone made you feel guilty for speaking your truth. Write down the situation in one sentence. Now write a second sentence starting with "the truth was." Fill it in, read it back. That is the sentence you must hold on to. That is your anchor. It doesn't mean the other person's feelings didn't matter. It means they didn't change what was true. This is how a Stoic fortifies the soul, by remembering that clarity is not cruelty and boundaries are not betrayal. We must also remember this: not all discomfort is damage. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed." This applies not only to ourselves, but to others. People feel hurt when their expectations are challenged, not always when they are wronged. A manipulator wants you to take full responsibility for their feelings, because once you do, they control the narrative. But a Stoic knows where the boundary lies. You are responsible for your actions, not their emotions. Here's a grounding phrase to keep: I choose what I carry. When someone tries to load guilt onto your back with a well-placed question, you pause and remember that. You do not carry burdens that are not yours. You are not cold. You are clear. You are not uncaring. You are unshaken. And in this world full of emotional manipulation disguised as moral concern, clarity is your armor. Lesson 6. Can't you just let it go? This question sounds harmless, even wise. It wears the mask of peace, of maturity, of moving on. But in the mouth of a manipulator, it's a trap. It's not about resolution. It's about silence. It's not about letting go. It's about letting them off the hook. And if you're not careful, you'll mistake submission for serenity. Comment, "Not every silence is peace," if you've felt this tension before. Because this question doesn't ask you to heal. It asks you to ignore. And that's a very different thing. Marcus Aurelius warned us. The first rule is to keep an untroubled spirit. The second is to look things in the face and know them for what they are. Manipulation thrives when you refuse to look, when you choose ease over clarity. But the Stoic does not confuse quiet with virtue. A liar uses this question to shut the door on accountability. It's their exit strategy. If they sense they're being exposed, if the truth starts to rise, they try to reframe your firmness as obsession, your insistence as weakness. Suddenly, you are the one making things difficult. You're holding on to something that should be over. But what they really mean is, stop confronting what I'm trying to avoid. Seneca, in his wisdom, offered this: he who excuses himself accuses himself. It's not your duty to argue endlessly, but it is your duty to not pretend that something is resolved when it isn't. The Stoic understands that resolution comes not from burying the truth, but from standing firmly in it, without rage, without obsession, without avoidance. Let's break this down practically. When someone says, "Can't you just let it go?" you must ask yourself, is there something unspoken that still matters? If the answer is yes, then no, you cannot let it go. Not out of stubbornness, but out of respect for reality. Stoicism doesn't ask you to carry unnecessary weight, but neither does it ask you to live in denial. Your peace must be earned, not faked. Manipulators use this question to confuse your inner compass. They want you to doubt whether standing firm is even worth it. They'll paint you as dramatic, bitter, unforgiving. But as Epictetus reminds us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And sometimes reacting with silence is strength. Other times, silence is surrender. The difference lies in the why. Here's a Stoic response you can practice. Peace is not pretending nothing happened. Simple, direct, calm. It puts the weight back where it belongs, on truth, not on appearance, because the Stoic seeks harmony, not performance. If the issue is resolved, you can let it go with full clarity. But if it's unresolved, then pretending otherwise is just a slower kind of harm. Take this as a journaling prompt. What am I being asked to let go of, and why does it still matter to me? Write it down. Explore the reason. If what you're holding onto is rooted in pride, consider releasing it. But if it's rooted in principle, in integrity, in the need for clarity, then stand by it. Not loudly, not endlessly, but firmly. We must never confuse Stoic detachment with emotional avoidance. The Stoic doesn't ignore conflict, they master it. They don't hide from tension, they clarify it. And when someone uses this question to force false closure, the Stoic response is not aggression, it's presence. It's standing in truth long enough to make the lie uncomfortable. Marcus Aurelius lived under constant pressure to let things go. Politics, betrayal, human pettiness. And yet in his meditations, he returned always to one principle. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. That includes pretending something is over when it isn't. That includes keeping silent just to avoid discomfort. So the next time someone says, "Can't you just let it go?" Pause. Then calmly say, "Not yet." Not out of anger, out of clarity. That's Stoicism in action. That's what it means to be unshakable, not cold but conscious. Lesson 5. Are you really going to make a big deal out of this? This question is a calculated maneuver to shrink your perception of what matters. It's not about seeking clarity, it's about minimizing impact. When a liar asks this, they're not confused about your concern. They're trying to convince you that your standards, your limits, your voice are exaggerated, that your reaction is disproportionate, that you are the problem for noticing what they hoped would go unnoticed. If you've ever second-guessed yourself in a moment like this, comment, "I trust my clarity," below. Because this is the exact type of doubt manipulators count on. They don't need you to collapse entirely. They just need you to hesitate, to pull back slightly, to soften your stance. And once you do, they fill the space you just vacated. What began as a clear boundary slowly fades into a silent compromise. The Stoics taught that perception is everything. Epictetus was clear. People are not disturbed by things, but by the views they take of them. A manipulator knows this and exploits it. By mocking or minimizing your concern, they plant a new view, a distorted one where your desire for accountability is framed as drama, one where your refusal to overlook a breach of respect is seen as overreaction. The goal is simple: make you feel foolish for standing your ground. But the Stoic doesn't measure situations by how loud others react or how small others wish them to be. They measure by principle. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, you always own the option of having no opinion. There is never a need to get worked up or to trouble your soul. And here's the twist: choosing to not get worked up is not the same as pretending nothing happened. Calmness is not consent. Let's be practical. When someone asks, "Are you really going to make a big deal out of this?" a Stoic doesn't flare up. They don't shout or justify. They calmly assess. Is what I'm addressing rooted in truth, integrity, or justice? If yes, then it's not a big deal. It's a right response. The Stoic path doesn't demand perfection from others, but it does demand honesty from ourselves. And if the truth creates discomfort, that's not your burden to soothe. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more. That is poor." The manipulator craves control, not truth. They fear your firmness, not because it's wrong, but because it reveals them. This question is a mirror. When someone tries to make your truth seem excessive, they are often hiding the real excess, their dishonesty. Now, try this thought experiment. Next time someone asks that question, instead of answering it, return with one of your own, not as a defense, but as a redirect to clarity. Why doesn't this matter to you? This flips the weight of scrutiny. It brings the silence back to where it belongs, their behavior. This is what Stoicism teaches us, not to react with fire, but to reflect with purpose. Let's anchor this lesson with a journaling prompt. What's something I've minimized because someone else told me it wasn't a big deal? Write it down. Then ask, was that situation truly small, or was it made to feel small? This is where you recover lost ground, where you reclaim moments when your voice was made to feel excessive. The Stoic doesn't escalate, they elevate. They don't inflate situations, but neither do they shrink from what matters. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." That includes being the one who sees clearly, even when others insist there's nothing to see. Here's a simple Stoic phrase to carry into conversations like these. What matters to me is not up for debate. Say it calmly. Say it without anger, but say it and mean it. Because liars will always try to reduce the space you stand on. Stoicism teaches you to expand it, not with noise, but with quiet certainty. Lesson 4. Why are you making this about you? At first, this question seems like a moral correction. It sounds noble, humbling even. It implies that you're being selfish, that your attention is misplaced, that you're centering yourself when you should be focusing on others. But when a manipulator asks this, it's not about balance, it's about erasure. It's a subtle way of invalidating your perspective while maintaining the appearance of fairness. Comment, "I won't disappear to keep peace," if you've been in this trap. Because that's exactly what this question demands, your disappearance. It pressures you to minimize your needs, your reactions, your truth under the illusion of maturity. But as the Stoics knew well, false humility is just another mask for manipulation. Seneca wrote, "You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire." What we fear often is the discomfort of being seen as selfish, even when we're simply being honest. When someone asks, "Why are you making this about you?" what they're really saying is, "Your view complicates my comfort." And that's the danger, because if they can convince you that self-respect is self-centeredness, they've won. They've framed your presence as a problem. The Stoic knows better. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. That applies to your boundaries. If they're right and true, then you do not owe anyone an apology for expressing them. Let's be clear. Stoicism is not egoism. It is not a justification for pride or domination. It is a path to inner clarity and outer justice. When a manipulator accuses you of making it about you, your task is to calmly assess, am I speaking from ego or from integrity? If it's ego, check yourself. If it's integrity, stand firm. The liar wants to confuse the two, to make your centeredness seem like self-centeredness. Don't let them. There's also a deeper psychological trick at play here. This question taps into a learned fear many people carry, the fear of being perceived as difficult. So we rush to soften, to retreat, to reframe. But Marcus Aurelius warned us, the opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject. And often, the manipulator doesn't care about truth. They care about control. They don't want you to be right. They want you to be quiet. Here's a Stoic tool you can apply immediately. When you feel that sting of being told you're making something about you, ask this silently. Whose experience am I erasing if I step back? Sometimes, that answer is yours. And sometimes, your silence feeds a lie. The Stoic path isn't about dominating conversations. It's about not abandoning truth for the sake of appearances. Let's ground this with a journaling reflection. What's one time I stayed silent to seem mature, but walked away feeling erased? Write it. Don't excuse it. Just face it. Then ask, was my silence noble, or was it conditioned? This is how you sharpen your awareness. This is how you move from emotional reaction to ethical clarity. Here's a simple phrase to carry into moments like these. I can listen without vanishing. That's the Stoic way. Firm, not forceful. Present, not overpowering. Honest, not apologetic. Because the question, why are you making this about you, is often an attempt to erase your clarity under the guise of balance. But balance without truth is just manipulation dressed as maturity. Lesson 3. Are you always this difficult? This question is not a genuine inquiry. It's a label. It aims to define you, to reduce you to a pattern, to make your current resistance feel like part of a larger flaw. It's a form of character assassination wrapped in a rhetorical question. The manipulator isn't curious. They're crafting an identity for you. Difficult, dramatic, unstable. And they want you to wear that label so you'll behave accordingly. If you've ever been made to feel too much for simply holding the line, comment, clarity is not conflict. Because that's the trap, convincing you that being clear is the same as being combative, that disagreeing equals being disagreeable. But the Stoic doesn't bend to avoid being misunderstood. As Epictetus taught, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid, not because you are, but because perception belongs to others, not to you. This question also relies on repetition. The more it's used, the more likely you are to internalize it. You begin to wonder if standing firm really does make you the problem, if asking for honesty or fairness makes you difficult. But Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. That includes not adopting the manipulator's perception of you. Your virtue is not defined by how easy you are to handle, but by how unwavering you are in truth. A liar uses this question to flip the dynamic. Suddenly, their actions disappear, and the focus turns to your tone, your words, your pattern. You're no longer talking about the real issue. You're talking about you, but not the real you, the version they want you to believe in. And if they can get you to defend your personality instead of your principle, the conversation is already lost. Let's explore a Stoic approach to this trap. When someone asks, "Are you always this difficult?" Pause, breathe, then calmly say, "I'm consistent when it matters." No anger, no sarcasm, just presence. That single sentence does three things. It affirms your stance, rejects their framing, and redirects the focus to values, not personality. Stoicism teaches us not to live reactively. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And one of the greatest wastes of time is self-explanation under emotional pressure. You don't owe a defense for being steady. You owe yourself the discipline of not getting tangled in someone else's emotional framing. Here's a reflection prompt. When was the last time I was called difficult for doing what was necessary? Write it down, then follow it with, "Would I do it again?" This builds inner loyalty, loyalty to your values, not to your image. That's what the Stoic cultivates, not popularity, but integrity. And integrity sometimes looks like difficulty to those who benefit from your compliance. Here's a simple affirmation for these moments. I'd rather be called difficult than become dishonest. Repeat it as needed, because the path of the Stoic is not paved with approval, it's carved with truth. And if that truth makes others uncomfortable, let it. You are not here to soothe their fragility. You are here to embody clarity. Lesson 2. What's your problem? This is not a real question. It's a provocation. It's the manipulator's attempt to push you off balance, to turn a situation where they might be exposed into a scenario where you look like the one out of control. It reframes everything. Suddenly, the issue is not their behavior, it's your reaction. And once you take that bait, the conversation is no longer about truth. It's about defending your emotions. Comment, "Calm is my power," if you've been in that exact moment, where your clarity was baited into anger. Because that's what this question is designed to trigger. Not reflection, but eruption. And the moment you erupt, they step back, arms crossed, smug, safe. The manipulator watches as you burn your own credibility in the fire they lit. The Stoics knew the danger of provocation. Epictetus taught, when someone irritates you, realize that it is your own opinion which has irritated you. This is not to blame yourself. It's to remind you that reaction is choice. You may not choose their words, but you choose your response. And the more provocative the question, the more powerful your stillness becomes. Let's break this down. When someone says, "What's your problem?" they're not seeking clarity. They're using tone as a weapon. They want to escalate the moment because escalation clouds reason. But Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the best answer to anger is silence. That silence isn't passive, it's precision. You are not ignoring the offense, you are refusing to amplify it. A practical Stoic move in this moment is not to answer the question directly. Why? Because the question isn't real. It's rhetorical aggression. Instead, respond with what the Stoics practiced. Redirection toward what is in your control. Try this. "I don't have a problem, I have a standard." Say it without sharpness. Say it without rush. That short phrase flips the script and puts the weight back where it belongs. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." And questions like this are designed to feed that imagination, to make you feel attacked, humiliated, cornered. But the Stoic doesn't collapse under that pressure. They return to what is stable, principle. You are not here to defend your tone. You are here to live by clarity, even in the face of hostility. Here's a reflection for your journal. When was the last time I reacted instead of responding? Write the event. Then write how a future version of you, grounded in Stoicism, would respond differently. This is not regret. It's rehearsal. It's how Stoics build resilience through practice, not perfection. And here's a phrase to anchor you. Provocation is a test. I choose clarity. That's your shield, that's your filter, because liars and manipulators thrive in the emotional fog they create. But the Stoic stands like a lighthouse, unmoved by the storm, lit from within. Lesson 1. Why are you overreacting? This question is not meant to understand you, it's meant to control you. It suggests that your perception is distorted, your emotions exaggerated, your reaction invalid. And once you start questioning your own reaction, the manipulator gains exactly what they want: power over your judgment. This is gaslighting wrapped in concern. If this hits close to home, comment, "I trust my senses," to affirm your inner compass. Because liars don't need to shout or lie outright. Sometimes they simply shift the frame, just enough to make you doubt what you saw, what you heard, what you felt. And when they ask, "Why are you overreacting?" they're really saying, "I didn't expect you to notice, and now you're making me uncomfortable." Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And that strength begins with honoring your perception. Not blindly, not emotionally, but calmly. You saw something, you felt something. Your reaction may be intense, but that doesn't mean it's an overreaction. It may mean the situation is more serious than they're willing to admit. This question also plays on a common insecurity, the fear of being too much, especially if you've been gaslit before. You start second-guessing yourself, toning down your truth, smiling through discomfort. But Epictetus reminds us, no man is free who is not master of himself. And that mastery includes not outsourcing your perception to someone who benefits from your doubt. A Stoic doesn't react loudly, but they also don't retreat quietly. When someone says you're overreacting, a grounded response might be, "I'm reacting to what I see." It's calm, it's measured, and most importantly, it's yours. That answer affirms your right to perceive, without begging for validation. Seneca once said, "The first step toward correcting a mistake is patience." That includes patience with yourself. When someone undermines your reaction, it's tempting to either explode or collapse. But the Stoic holds steady. They observe. They trust the evidence of reason, not just emotion, but not without it either. Here's a practical exercise. Think of a moment where someone accused you of overreacting. Write down the exact words you heard. Then write what you wished you had said, something clear, calm, and unshakable. This exercise isn't about rehearsing confrontation, it's about building confidence in your own clarity. Anchor this lesson with a Stoic phrase you can repeat when needed. My response is mine to measure. Because in a world where manipulators question your every reaction, Stoicism teaches you to measure from within, not from guilt, not from fear, not from someone else's comfort, but from reasoned self-trust. There's a moment that comes after you've been manipulated, after the questions have been asked, the tone has shifted, and the damage has been done. It's quiet, not dramatic, just quiet. And in that silence, something inside you asks, was it me? That's the moment the liar was aiming for, not the argument, not the disagreement, but the quiet erosion of your inner clarity. Because if they can make you question yourself, they never have to answer for what they did. Stoicism exists for exactly this moment, not for grand speeches, not for status or applause, but for that quiet internal space where your dignity hangs in the balance, where you either collapse into confusion or return to reason. Marcus Aurelius wrote, not to impress others, but to remind himself daily. Look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up, if thou wilt always look. And that is where you must go when someone tries to manipulate you with questions that aren't real questions, but weapons. Each of these 8 questions is a subtle attack on your perception. A small twist in language designed to shift focus away from truth and onto your reaction. And they work, not because you're weak, but because you're human. You want to be fair. You want to be kind. You don't want to seem cold or dramatic or difficult. That's exactly what a liar counts on. But you're not here to preserve their comfort. You're here to live in truth. The Stoics didn't teach us to be passive. They taught us to be immovable. They didn't say, let it go to avoid discomfort. They said, hold to what is true. They didn't say, don't feel. They said, don't be ruled by feelings. And when a manipulator tries to make you doubt your reaction, Stoicism teaches you to go inward, not to escape, but to realign, to remember your principles, to return to your reason. Because here's the reality: most manipulation is not loud, it's not obvious, it's not brutal, it's subtle. It comes wrapped in politeness, concern, false vulnerability. It sounds like care, but it functions as control. And unless you've trained your mind to recognize this, unless you've prepared your soul for clarity, you will fall into the same cycle over and over again. Self-doubt, silence, guilt, concession. That's why we return to the writings of Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius. Not to memorize quotes, but to forge inner discipline. Because what good is Stoic wisdom if it doesn't show up when it matters most? When your voice is under pressure, when your clarity is questioned, when your presence is called too much. When someone asks you, why are you being so defensive, and you know exactly why. This is what Stoicism gives you: not escape, but structure; not avoidance, but endurance; the ability to respond, not react; the strength to stay still when everything around you is trying to provoke you into justifying your worth. And when the questions start, those subtle manipulative questions, you won't need to argue. You won't need to shout. You won't even need to explain. You'll simply remember, I answer only to truth. And that's the kind of presence that makes manipulators uncomfortable, because they can't shake it. They can't twist it. They can't own it. When you hold to your reason, you become unmoved. And not because you don't care, but because you care correctly. You care about integrity more than image, about truth more than tone, about clarity more than comfort. If this video gave you that clarity, even a moment of it, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Comment below what question hit you the hardest. Was it, don't you care how this makes me feel? Or, why are you making this about you? Maybe it was, are you really going to make a big deal out of this? Whatever it was, name it. Because naming it is the first step to neutralizing its power. The Stoic Diary community isn't just here to feed you wisdom. We're here to help you practice it, to live it, to walk into difficult conversations without losing yourself, to walk away from manipulation without losing your calm, to walk forward in life, measured, honest, whole. You will be misunderstood. You will be called harsh, cold, distant. You may even lose people who benefited from your confusion. Let them go. As Marcus Aurelius said, if someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. I seek the truth. But if they can't, and they only seek to control you through guilt, through framing, through these subtle questions, then your clarity is not a problem. It's a mirror they can't face, so walk in it. You don't need to be louder than them, just firmer than their doubt. You don't need the last word, just the last conviction. And if you feel the pull to shrink, to soften your truth so someone else can feel taller, remember this: you were not born to be manageable. You were born to be grounded. Thank you for watching. Thank you for choosing clarity over comfort. And thank you for continuing to build a mind that liars cannot twist and a presence they cannot move.